He heard it before he saw it. A small voice, thin as a thread, floating out of the dark hallway at 3 a.m. Mummy. Graham Ashford froze in the doorway of his bedroom, barefoot on cold marble, heart thumping like a fist against a locked door. His son had not spoken in years, not a word, not a sound that meant anything. Doctors had written it in neat, confident letters, no progress possible. Yet there it was again, softer this time, almost like the house itself was exhaling. Mummy? Quick one before we go any further. Tell me where you're watching from, and if you believe every child deserves dignity, fairness, and real accountability, hit like, subscribe, and stay with me. Because what happens in this house is going to test who you think the real provider is. Graham stepped into the corridor. The Ashford estate was built to impress strangers. A long gallery of oil portraits, security sensors hidden in the molding, soft wall lights that never fully turned off. Everything designed to feel expensive, untouchable, and controlled. But at the far end, past the nursery wing, a small lamp was on, a warm glow. And on the floor, in the pool of that light, sat 2 figures. One was his son, Jasper Ashford, 6 years old, with hair that fell into his eyes and a body that held itself like it was bracing for impact. His knees pulled to his chest, his hands tight in his lap, the same posture he had kept for months, like stillness was armor. The other figure was a man Graham only knew as the night janitor, Solomon Reed, mid-50s, quiet, average height, an ordinary uniform that disappeared against the grandeur of the house, as if the fabric itself knew it did not belong here. Solomon was not touching the child. He was simply sitting beside him, palms open on his own knees, breathing slow, humming something low and steady like a tide. And Jasper, who refused eye contact with every therapist, every specialist, every hired expert flown in from 3 countries, was staring. Not past Solomon, not through him, at him. Locked. Graham's throat tightened. His first instinct was command. Step away from him. Solomon's head turned slightly, not startled, not guilty, just present. He spoke softly, as if loudness would shatter something fragile. Sir, I'm not in his space. I'm just keeping it safe. Graham stepped closer, anger rising because anger was familiar and grief was not. What did you do? Solomon glanced at Jasper, then back to Graham. I did nothing you could pay for. Jasper's lips moved again. His voice was not clear. It was not a clean miracle. It was more like a door that had not been used in years creaking open a fraction. My. Solomon did not react like a man chasing a headline. He did not clap or gasp or celebrate. He simply nodded, slow and calm, as if Jasper had handed him something sacred and he was accepting it properly. Yes, Solomon whispered. I hear you. Graham stood there, billionaire, board chairman, donor to half the city, and suddenly he felt like the poorest man in the world. Because he could buy silence, he could buy compliance, he could buy the best help money could offer, but he could not buy whatever was happening on that floor. And the worst part was this. His son looked safer with the janitor than he ever looked with his own father. Graham forced his voice into something controlled. Jasper should be in bed. Solomon nodded again. He couldn't sleep. The lights in the hall were humming, and the new air freshener they put in the vents is sharp. He was holding it in for a long time. Graham blinked. The air freshener. The hall lights. These were details Graham did not even register in his own home. He stared at his child, and Jasper's eyes flicked up, not to Graham's face, but to the shiny cufflink on Graham's sleeve. Then Jasper's gaze slid away again, like looking at his father was too loud. Graham's jaw tightened. Solomon spoke gently, but it landed like a verdict. He's not ignoring you, sir. He's protecting himself from you. The words hit Graham hard enough that he actually swayed. Protecting himself from you. Graham's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Because what could he say? He had paid for every therapy, every report, every device. He had made sure Jasper's rooms were perfect, curated, quiet, spotless. He had staff schedules, routines, charts, plans. But he had never once sat on the floor, never once breathed slow, never once asked, "What is the world like inside my child?" He had been present in the building, absent in the relationship. Solomon glanced at Graham and his voice lowered further. "Sir, if you want to help, don't rush at him. Don't ask for performance. Just come down. Sit where I'm sitting." Graham hesitated. He did not sit on floors. Floors were for other people. But then Jasper made a small sound, not speech, more like discomfort, and he curled tighter, eyes darting. The moment was slipping away. Graham swallowed and lowered himself, carefully at first, then awkwardly, then fully, suit trousers meeting polished wood. He sat about a meter away. Solomon did not move. He did not make a show of it. He simply widened the circle of calm. Graham tried to look at Jasper, but Jasper looked down. Solomon hummed again, the same steady melody. And in that hum, Graham felt something he had not felt since the day his wife died. Home. Not the building. Home. 2 years earlier, the Ashford estate had been a different place, softer, warmer. Evelyn Ashford had been the kind of woman who made an enormous house feel lived in, not staged. She did not speak in threats or schedules. She spoke in rituals. A cup of tea left in the same spot every morning for the gardener. A blanket folded at the end of every sofa because someone might get cold. A lullaby she hummed under her breath when she walked past the nursery, even when Jasper was too little to understand. When Evelyn got sick, Graham's response was money. Doctors with titles long enough to sound like guarantees, private wings, experimental treatments. He fought the illness like it was a hostile takeover, and when she died anyway, something in him snapped. He did not cry in public. He did not collapse. He tightened. He controlled everything left. He poured himself into work, into providing, into making sure nothing else could be lost on his watch. And Jasper, already sensitive, already overwhelmed by the world, shut down. Therapists called it regression. Specialists called it severe nonverbal presentation. Graham called it unacceptable, not because he did not love his son, because he did not know how to love him without being able to fix him. So he outsourced love. Nannies, tutors, therapists, behavioral plans, specialist schools. Each week a new folder landed on Graham's desk with charts and goals. Eye contact for 1 second, hand-over-hand prompt, reduced self-soothing, increased tolerance, and every week Jasper became quieter, not because he was failing, because he was being managed. Meanwhile, Jasper's little sister Lyra, 4 years old, watched all of it with wide eyes and a silence that felt like waiting. She still spoke, but less and less, as if the whole house was teaching her that words did not change anything. When Graham hired Solomon, it was not personal. It was an agency contract. Night shift janitor, 3 nights a week, background checked, no interaction with family. Invisible. That was the point. People like Solomon existed in Graham's world the way light switches existed. You noticed them only when they stopped working. Solomon arrived quietly, cleaned quietly, and left quietly. But Solomon noticed things. He noticed how the nursery smelled like disinfectant. He noticed the way Jasper flinched when doors clicked shut. He noticed how the boy's eyes tracked movement in reflections, not faces. He noticed how staff spoke about Jasper as if he was a project, not a person. And Solomon noticed something else too. The grief in the house. Not the fancy kind that sits in framed photographs. The raw kind. The kind that lives in a father's clenched jaw and a child's shut door. On the night Jasper first came out of his room, Solomon had been polishing a corridor banister. He heard soft footsteps. He looked up and saw Jasper in the doorway, barefoot, wearing his pajamas inside out, fingers pressed hard to his ears. Jasper was not looking for attention. He was looking for escape. Solomon did not speak right away. He simply stepped back from the corridor lights and turned the wall dimmer down 2 clicks. Jasper's shoulders dropped a fraction. Solomon put his cleaning cloth away slowly and sat down on the floor, not facing Jasper, not demanding anything, just existing. Jasper stayed in the doorway, trembling, watching. Solomon began to hum, low and slow, a melody that came from somewhere deep in him, a sound he had used years ago in a children's ward when bright machines and sharper voices overwhelmed little bodies. He had worked there once, not as a doctor, not as a hero, just as a porter who cleaned and moved things and made sure the bins were emptied. He had lost his own son in that same hospital, a boy who never made it past 7, a boy who had taught Solomon that healing was not always cure. Sometimes healing was safety, sometimes healing was being with someone without trying to turn them into someone else. The first time Solomon hummed in the Ashford corridor, Jasper's eyes widened. Then Jasper stepped out, 1 foot, then another. Then Jasper sat, close enough to feel the vibration of the hum, far enough to keep his own space. And now, tonight, the impossible had happened. Jasper had given a sound that meant something. Graham sat on the floor, trying not to breathe too fast, trying not to ruin it with his urgency. Solomon kept humming. Minutes passed. Graham's mind raced, but his body stayed still. Then Jasper did something Graham had not seen in months. Jasper's fingers loosened, his hands unfolded, and slowly, carefully, as if he was testing whether the world would punish him for reaching, Jasper extended one hand toward Solomon. He did not touch him. He hovered. Solomon did not move. He did not grab the hand. He did not try to turn it into a lesson. He just let Jasper choose. After a long moment, Jasper's fingertips brushed Solomon's sleeve, a contact so light it could have been imagined, but Graham saw it, and his eyes burned. Solomon spoke without looking away from Jasper. "Sir, you can stand up now if you want, but don't take him from this. Don't drag him back into the machine of the house. Let him decide when he's done." Graham's pride wanted to argue. His fear wanted to yank Jasper back to the rules, but his grief, old and heavy, whispered something new. Let him decide. Graham stood slowly. He backed away like a man leaving a wildlife sanctuary. He did not speak again. He went back to his room and closed the door. Then he leaned against it and slid down to the floor, suit jacket creasing, and he covered his mouth with his hand so the house would not hear him break. The next morning, Graham called an emergency meeting, not with his staff, with his management team. Because when Graham Ashford did not understand something, he treated it like a business risk. In the boardroom, sunlight pouring over the long table, his assistant placed files in front of each person. One file was about Jasper. One file was about Solomon Reed. Graham sat at the head, composed, face like stone. His sister, Marlene, sat to his right. Marlene ran the family foundation and spoke like every conversation was a negotiation. Opposite them sat Dr. Hart, Jasper's lead specialist, a woman with calm eyes and a portfolio of progress charts. Graham tapped the table once. "Explain to me why my son spoke last night." Dr. Hart's expression tightened. "Spoke is a strong word, Mr. Ashford. Vocalizations can occur without functional language." Marlene leaned forward. "He called the janitor mummy." Dr. Hart blinked, then recovered. "That could be echolalia, or an association, or a random sound shaped like a word." Graham's hands clenched. "It was not random." Dr. Hart chose her words carefully. "Children with significant communication differences can show breakthroughs when a variable changes, but that does not mean the janitor caused it. It may be coincidence." Coincidence. Graham hated that word. Coincidence meant he could not control it. Marlene's voice sharpened. "So what are you suggesting? We let a night janitor start experimenting on our children because he has a nice humming voice?" Dr. Hart nodded slightly. "There are risks, yes. Boundary issues, inconsistent methodology. The child's care plan exists for a reason." Graham's assistant, Claire, cleared her throat. "Sir, Solomon has been with the agency for 8 years, no complaints. He's quiet, reliable." Marlene's eyes flashed. "We are not discussing his reliability. We are discussing access. Graham stared at the file on Solomon, a passport photo, a list of previous employment, and then one line that caught his eye. Prior role, hospital facilities, pediatric wing. Graham looked up. He worked in a children's hospital. Dr. Hart's brows lifted. So did many staff. It does not make him a clinician. Graham's voice went cold. I don't need him to be a clinician. I need to know why my son looked at him like he was safe. Dr. Hart hesitated. Safety is not measurable in charts, and everyone in that room knew it. Marlene stood. This is simple. We remove him. We keep the structure. We do not let a staff member blur roles in a grieving household. Graham's jaw tightened again. Grieving household? No one said that aloud around him, like grief was a weakness. But it was the truth. Graham stood too. No one touches Jasper without my permission. No one changes his routines without my permission. But I will not fire a man because my child responded to him. Marlene stared at her brother. You are being emotional. Graham's eyes narrowed. I have not been emotional in 2 years. Perhaps that is the problem. Marlene looked away first. Graham turned to Claire. I want Solomon on a different shift, daytime. I want him visible. I want everyone to know where he is at all times. And I want Dr. Hart to observe, not interfere. Dr. Hart's mouth tightened again, but she nodded. Graham had decided. That afternoon, Solomon arrived at the estate in daylight for the first time. He looked slightly uncomfortable, like the house was louder under the sun. Claire led him to the kitchen and handed him a cup of tea. Mr. Ashford wants you on D. Day shift. Solomon took the cup carefully. Day shift is family time. Claire gave him a look. Apparently not in this house. Solomon did not smile. He asked the question softly. Is Jasper all right today? Claire lowered her voice. He's been calm. He's in the sunroom. Solomon nodded. He did not ask to see him. He simply said, All right, and began cleaning the skirting boards as if nothing had happened. But Jasper knew. From the sunroom doorway, Jasper stood with his hand in his mouth, watching Solomon across the corridor, not looking at his face, but tracking his movement like a lighthouse beam. Solomon moved slowly, predictably. He did not slam doors. He did not whistle. He did not speak at Jasper unless Jasper moved closer. Graham watched from the top of the staircase, half hidden behind the banister. He felt something strange in his chest. Jealousy. Not of Solomon's status, of Solomon's calm. Because calm was what his children needed, and Graham did not know how to produce it. That evening, Dr. Hart arrived with an assistant and a tablet device. We are introducing AAC, she told Graham. Augmentative and alternative communication. He may not speak, but he can communicate. Graham nodded, though shame prickled, because he realized he had delayed this for too long, chasing the fantasy of normal speech. They sat Jasper at a small table. The tablet showed icons: food, drink, toilet, more, stop. Dr. Hart smiled brightly. Jasper, touch more. Jasper stared past her. His body stiffened. His hands retreated under the table. Dr. Hart leaned forward. Jasper, use your hands. Graham watched Jasper's breathing speed up. He recognized the signs now, because Solomon had shown him what to watch for. The tightening shoulders, the eyes darting, the small shake in the fingers. Graham started to stand. Solomon, who had been wiping a nearby shelf, spoke softly without turning. Sir, he's getting flooded. Dr. Hart looked up, annoyed. This is the plan. Solomon set down his cloth. He did not challenge her authority with volume. He challenged it with truth. Plans don't matter if the person isn't safe. Dr. Hart's jaw tightened. Graham's voice came out rough. Stop. Dr. Hart paused. Graham stepped closer to Jasper and lowered his own body until he was level with his son's chair, not towering over him. He remembered last night. No rushing, no performance. He spoke quietly. Jasper, it's all right. Jasper did not look at him, but his shoulders loosened a fraction. Solomon moved to the far corner and turned the lamp down. The room softened. The assistant stopped tapping the tablet. Silence. Then, slowly, Jasper's eyes flicked to the screen, not because he was commanded, because the pressure had eased. Solomon approached, careful, and sat on the floor again, a little distance away. He began humming, not loudly, just enough to steady the air. Jasper's breathing slowed. Dr. Hart stared, forced to watch the reality she could not chart. Jasper's hand emerged from under the table. It hovered over the tablet. Then, with a small, deliberate press, Jasper tapped an icon. Not more, not food. He tapped stop. And then he looked, not at Dr. Hart, at Graham's cufflink. Graham swallowed hard. He realized his son had just communicated a boundary. Stop. Not a failure, a voice. Dr. Hart cleared her throat. That is meaningful. Solomon's hum continued, unbroken. Graham looked at Solomon, and for the first time, he did not see a janitor. He saw a translator. A few days later, Marlene came back with a new idea. A prestigious residential program in Switzerland. Private, expensive, highly structured. She presented it like a solution. We can't let this become some sentimental experiment, she said in Graham's study. You have a reputation. The foundation has stakeholders. Jasper needs professional support. Graham stared at the brochure. Glossy pictures of smiling children and sleek white buildings. He imagined Jasper inside a place like that, a place where calm was enforced, not offered. He spoke slowly. I'm not sending my son away. Marlene's eyes flashed. You're not thinking clearly. Graham looked up. I have never thought more clearly. Marlene stepped closer. This man, this Solomon, is a staff member. He is not family. The word family twisted something in Graham's chest, because the truth was brutal. Solomon was acting more like family than Graham had. Graham's voice went quiet. You're right. He's not family. Marlene's mouth tightened in victory. Graham continued. But he behaves like someone who understands what family requires, and I am learning from him. Marlene stared as if her brother had spoken a foreign language. You are paying him to clean. Graham stood. I have paid plenty of people. None of them gave my son a way to say stop. None of them made him look at the world without fear. Marlene scoffed. This is grief. Graham's eyes sharpened. Yes, it is, and I am done turning grief into control. Marlene's expression hardened. Then you will regret it. She left the study like a threat. That night, Graham found Solomon in the library dusting shelves. The library was enormous, filled with books Graham rarely opened. Graham cleared his throat. Solomon. Solomon turned, respectful. Sir. Graham hesitated, then spoke. Why do you do this? Solomon did not pretend not to understand. You mean, why do I sit on the floor? Graham's jaw flexed. Yes. Solomon set down his cloth. He looked around the room, then at Graham. Because children learn who's safe by who doesn't demand anything from them. Graham swallowed. That sounds simple. Solomon nodded. It is simple, not easy. Simple. Graham's voice lowered. Did you have children? Solomon's eyes softened. Yes. One word, heavy. Graham waited. Solomon took a breath. My boy Micah, he was quiet too, different. The world was too sharp for him. We spent a lot of time in hospitals. Graham's chest tightened. Solomon continued, still calm, but something raw flickered beneath it. One day he grabbed my finger and held on, like he was anchoring himself. He didn't speak much, but he knew me. He knew when I was present. Graham's throat closed. What happened? Solomon's gaze dropped for a moment, then returned. He didn't make it. Silence filled the library. Not empty silence, sacred silence. Graham's eyes burned again, but he refused to blink. I'm sorry, Solomon nodded. I don't need pity, sir. I need people to stop acting like money is the same as presents. The words were not cruel. They were accurate. Graham looked away, ashamed. Solomon added, gentler. Your boy is still here. That means you still have time. Time. Graham had spent his life buying time, but he had not been using it. The next morning, Jasper had a meltdown. Not the kind Graham could hide behind closed doors. It happened in the breakfast room, with staff present. A new chef had made scrambled eggs with a strong smell. A vase of lilies had been placed on the table. A cleaner had polished the floor too heavily, leaving a slick shine. Tiny things. But for Jasper, the world became a storm. He screamed not words, pure overwhelm. He shoved his chair back, hands on his ears, rocking hard. Lyra started crying too, copying the panic because children share fear like smoke. A nanny rushed forward. "It's all right, Jasper. Calm down, calm down." Her voice rose. She reached for his wrists. Jasper's scream spiked higher. Graham stood, heart pounding, ready to bark orders. Then he caught Solomon's eye. Solomon was already moving, not fast, not frantic, steady. He crossed the room and turned off the overhead lights. The air immediately softened. He motioned for the chef to take the eggs away. He opened a window a crack. He did not touch Jasper. He lowered himself to the floor, just within Jasper's range, and started humming. Graham's fists clenched. His instincts screamed, "Fix it! Stop it! Control it!" But Solomon's calm was like a hand on Graham's shoulder. Graham took a breath. Then he did something he had never done before in front of staff. He sat on the floor too, not at Jasper's face, near Jasper's side. He copied Solomon's posture. Open palms, slow breathing, no demands. Jasper's screaming did not stop instantly. This was not a magic trick. But after a minute, Jasper's rocking slowed. After another minute, his hands loosened slightly from his ears. Lyra's crying quieted, watching her father on the floor like she couldn't believe it. Graham whispered to her, "It's all right. We're safe." Lyra sniffed and crawled into his lap. Graham's throat tightened again. Because Lyra had been waiting for him too. Jasper's eyes flicked briefly to Graham. Not a full look, a glance, a test. Graham held still. Jasper's breathing slowed further. Then Jasper did something that punched through Graham's chest. He reached out and touched Graham's sleeve, a small contact. Not affection exactly. More like, "Are you here?" Graham swallowed hard and whispered, "Yes." Solomon's hum continued, steady as a heartbeat. Later that day, when Jasper was calm again, Graham walked through the nursery wing alone. He opened drawers, looked at shelves, noticed things he had ignored for months, the smell of antiseptic, the harshness of the lighting, the way the toys were arranged like a showroom, not a child's world. Then, at the back of a cupboard behind neatly stacked linens, he found a notebook. A simple, worn notebook, not expensive, not leather-bound, just paper and faded ink. Evelyn's handwriting. Graham's fingers shook as he opened it. Inside were pages of notes, not medical, not charts, notes about Jasper, what soothed him, what overwhelmed him, what made him smile when he was a baby. And on one page, underlined twice, a lullaby. The exact melody Solomon hummed. Graham's breath caught. How did Solomon know? Graham turned pages faster. Then he found a sentence that made his knees go weak. "If you're reading this and I'm not here, please remember, my love, the children do not need more strategies. They need safety. Find the person who can sit with them when the world is too loud. Sometimes it will not be the person with the title. Sometimes it will be the person no one notices." Graham's eyes blurred. He flipped the page. A name, not Graham's, not a doctor's, a simple note. Solomon, hospital nights, kind eyes, hums when the babies cry. If our home ever needs a steady heart, I pray he finds us. Graham's chest tightened like a fist closing. Evelyn knew him, not as a janitor, as a steady heart. Graham stumbled out of the cupboard and walked straight down the corridor, notebook in hand, searching. He found Solomon in the laundry room, folding cleaning cloths with methodical care. Solomon. Solomon turned, then froze when he saw the notebook. His face changed. Not fear, recognition. Old and sudden, Graham's voice broke. "Did you know my wife?" Solomon stared at the pages like they were a ghost. "I met her once," he said quietly. "In the hospital. She used to come in and sit with the children who had no visitors. She'd hum, just like this." Graham's hands trembled. "She wrote your name." Solomon's eyes lifted, wet but controlled. "She remembered my name?" Graham nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Then he managed, "Why didn't you tell me?" Solomon's voice stayed calm, but something cracked underneath it. "Because, sir, you didn't see me, and because your grief filled every room. I didn't think you wanted reminders of the hospital." Graham's shoulders sagged. "I didn't want reminders of anything." Solomon nodded. "That's why the children couldn't breathe." The truth was brutal, but it was clean. Graham stared at Solomon like he was seeing him for the first time in his life. "You were humming her song." Solomon's gaze dropped. "I didn't realize it was hers at first. I heard it in my head when the corridor lights were too loud for him." Graham pressed the notebook to his chest, like he could hold Evelyn close through paper. Then he did something he had not done with another man in years. He said, plainly, "Help me." Solomon's eyes softened. "I will, sir, but you have to do the hardest part." Graham swallowed. "What's that?" Solomon spoke gently. "You have to stop trying to be the hero. You have to be the father." Days became weeks, and the Ashford house began to change, not with renovations, but with choices. The disinfectant smell was replaced with mild soap. The overhead lights were used less. The staff stopped speaking about Jasper like he was a case. Graham insisted on it. "He is not a diagnosis," Graham told them. "He is my son." Dr. Hart adjusted her approach too, slowly, reluctantly at first, then with genuine respect. She began to treat Jasper's communication attempts as valid, not as non-compliance. Jasper began using the AAC tablet more, not constantly, not on command, but when he was safe. He pressed stop when overwhelmed. He pressed quiet when the house got loud. He pressed outside when he wanted air. And Graham started learning a language that was not built around his ego: presence, routine, patience. One afternoon, Solomon found Graham sitting on the nursery rug, not looking at his phone, not taking a call, just sitting. Lyra leaned against him, watching cartoons with the sound low. Jasper sat a few feet away, lining up toy cars in a careful row. Solomon paused in the doorway. Graham looked up and spoke quietly. "I used to think providing meant making sure they never lacked anything." Solomon nodded. "And now?" Graham swallowed. "Now I think providing means making sure they never lack me." Solomon's face softened. "That's it." Then the threat came. It always comes. Because healing invites pressure from the world that prefers control. A letter arrived from the family legal office. Marlene had involved trustees. They wanted an assessment. They wanted documentation. They wanted to know if Graham was competent to manage the estate and the children after unusual staffing decisions. Graham sat in his study with the letter, fury pulsing under his skin. Marlene walked in like she owned the air. "This isn't personal," she said. "It's governance." Graham looked up slowly. "You are questioning my competence because I sat on the floor with my son." Marlene's lips thinned. "I'm questioning your judgment. You are attaching to a staff member because you cannot face your grief." Graham stood, letter in hand. "Don't you dare reduce this to attachment." Marlene's eyes were cold. "You will lose control of this family if you keep making emotional decisions." Graham stepped closer. "Control is not the goal," Marlene scoffed. "It is when you are responsible for a legacy." Graham's voice went quiet, dangerous. "My children are not a legacy. They are human beings." Marlene's gaze flicked to the notebook on Graham's desk. Evelyn's notebook. She pointed at it. "You are letting her memory turn you into someone reckless." Graham's eyes flashed. "No. Her memory is turning me into someone awake." Marlene shook her head. "This man will leave. All staff do. Then what? Your children will collapse again." Graham's jaw tightened. Then he said the sentence that changed everything. "Then I will be the calm, not because I'm perfect, because I will be present." Marlene stared. She had no answer for that. She left, but the threat remained. An official evaluator was scheduled. A stranger in a suit was going to walk into Graham's home and decide whether his love was acceptable. The night before the evaluation, Jasper barely slept. The house felt tense again. Graham's chest tightened as old habits knocked at the door. Control it, plan it, fix it. He found Jasper in the sunroom, pacing, fingers pressed to his temples. Solomon sat on the floor, humming softly. Graham entered and sat too. Jasper did not look at him, but Jasper did not run away either. Graham whispered, "I'm here." Solomon stopped humming and spoke to Graham quietly. "Sir, he feels your fear." Graham swallowed. "I'm trying not to." Solomon nodded. "Don't hide it. Just hold it calmly. Tell him the truth in a way he can feel." Graham looked at Jasper and took a slow breath. He spoke softly, steady. "Tomorrow, a stranger is coming. That makes me nervous, but you are safe. I will not let anyone take you away. I promise." Jasper's pacing slowed. His eyes flicked to the AAC tablet on the table. He walked to it and pressed a button. "Dad." The voice was robotic, flat, electronic, but it was a word, a choice, a direction. Graham's throat closed instantly. He covered his mouth with his hand. Solomon did not celebrate loudly. He simply nodded, eyes shining. "Yes," Solomon whispered, "that's your dad." Graham leaned forward, careful not to crowd him. He whispered, "Thank you." Jasper did not answer with speech, but he reached out, took Graham's finger, and held on, anchoring himself. Graham's whole body shook, silent, because he finally understood. This was hope, not bought, built. The next day, the evaluator arrived. A polite man with a clipboard and a smile that never reached his eyes. He asked questions about routines, about staff roles, about risk. Graham answered calmly. Then the man asked, "Why is the janitor involved in the children's care?" Marlene sat in the corner, watching, waiting to win. Graham looked at Solomon, then back at the evaluator. "He is not involved in their care," Graham said. "He is involved in their safety, and I am involved in both now." The evaluator frowned. "That is not standard." Graham nodded. "I don't care." The evaluator blinked. Graham continued, voice firm, controlled in a new way. "My children are not standard, and neither is grief. Standard did not help us. Presence is helping us." The evaluator scribbled something. Marlene's eyes narrowed. Then, as if the universe wanted to test the truth, Jasper walked into the room. Not rushing, not hiding. He approached the table and stood beside Graham, fingers twisting his shirt hem. The evaluator smiled brightly, too bright. "Hello, Jasper." Jasper did not look at his face. The evaluator leaned forward. "Can you say hello?" Graham's jaw flexed. Old Graham would have demanded performance. New Graham breathed slowly and said quietly, "He does not perform on command." The evaluator's smile tightened. Jasper looked down at the tablet on the table. He pressed a button. "Stop." The robotic voice cut through the room. Graham's chest swelled, not because Jasper obeyed, because Jasper spoke, and Graham honored it. Solomon remained still, the steady heart Evelyn had prayed for. The evaluator cleared his throat. "I see." Marlene's fingers tightened on her handbag, because she saw too. Control was losing, presence was winning. Weeks later, the Ashford Foundation hosted a charity gala. Marlene insisted Graham attend. "It's optics," she said. "You need to show stability." Graham hated the word optics now, but he agreed on one condition. The children would not be forced into the event. They would have a quiet room upstairs with Solomon and familiar routines. Marlene rolled her eyes but agreed. The gala glittered. Crystal glasses, cameras, donors laughing in expensive clothes. People approached Graham with sympathy lines about Evelyn and performative concern about the children. Graham smiled politely, but he felt hollow. Then, halfway through the night, a loud cheer erupted in the main hall. A surprise auction item. A band began playing. The noise spiked. Upstairs, Jasper screamed. The sound traveled down the stairwell like a siren. Graham froze mid-conversation. Marlene's eyes widened in horror. Do something, she hissed. Now! Old Graham would have sent staff. Old Graham would have stayed downstairs to protect his image. But Graham set his glass down. He did not apologize. He did not explain. He turned and walked up the stairs. In full view of donors, in full view of cameras. Marlene grabbed his arm. Graham, this will be a disaster. Graham looked at her. No, he said quietly. The disaster was choosing optics over my children for 2 years. He pulled free and kept walking. Upstairs, Jasper was in the quiet room, hands on his ears, rocking hard. Lyra cried too, panicked by the noise. Solomon sat on the floor, humming, but Jasper was flooded. Graham entered, took off his suit jacket and sat down. He pulled Lyra into his lap. He breathed slow. He did not rush Jasper. He did not demand calm. He simply became it. Minutes passed. The hum softened the air. Graham whispered, "You're safe. I'm here." Jasper's rocking slowed. He reached for the tablet and pressed quiet. Graham nodded. Yes, quiet. Then Jasper pressed another button. Dad. Graham's throat tightened again, but he stayed steady. Yes, Jasper. Dad. Downstairs, the gala buzzed with gossip, but upstairs, something more valuable was happening. A billionaire was becoming a father, not in speeches, in silence, in patience, in staying. Later that night, after the guests left and the house settled, Graham stood in the nursery doorway and watched his children sleep. Solomon approached quietly. Sir. Graham turned. His voice was low, honest. I thought tonight would ruin everything. Solomon shook his head gently. No, sir. Tonight built something. Graham swallowed. I chose them over the room. Solomon nodded. That's what they needed to see. Graham stared into the dark hallway, remembering that first night. Mummy, in a small voice. Evelyn's notebook, Evelyn's prayer, and Solomon, the invisible man, becoming the bridge. Graham spoke quietly. I want you to stay. Solomon's eyes softened. I'm here, sir, as long as you keep doing your part. Graham nodded. I will. In the months that followed, the Ashford estate became a different kind of wealthy. Not louder, not flashier, kinder. The staff learned the children's signals. Doors closed softly. Harsh lights were replaced with warm lamps. Schedules existed, but they served the children, not the ego of the adults. Graham restructured his work life. He took fewer calls. He left meetings early. He sat on floors. He learned that communication was not a performance. It was a relationship. Jasper did not become a different child. He became more himself. He used the tablet to say what he needed. He made more eye contact, not forced, but offered. He held Graham's finger when he needed grounding. Lyra began speaking more too, laughter returning slowly as the house stopped holding its breath. One evening, months later, Graham sat in the sunroom with Jasper beside him. Solomon was cleaning the glass doors. The air was quiet. Graham picked up the notebook and hummed Evelyn's lullaby, softly. Not perfectly, but with love. Jasper looked at him for longer than usual. Then Jasper reached for the tablet. He pressed a button. Love you. The voice was robotic. The meaning was not. Graham's eyes filled, but he smiled. I love you too. Solomon paused, just for a moment, and let himself feel it. A house that had been built with money was finally being rebuilt with presence. And if you're still here, here's the takeaway. If you can only give people your resources but not your attention, you are not providing. You are outsourcing love. Children do not need a perfect parent. They need a present one. And sometimes the person who changes everything is the person no one noticed, until the moment safety became louder than status. As the lights dimmed that night, Graham stood by Evelyn's portrait and whispered, You were right. Then he noticed something he had never noticed before. A small symbol drawn in the corner of Evelyn's notebook page. A hospital case number, not Jasper's, not Lyra's, a different one. Graham's stomach tightened. He turned the page and found a note he had somehow missed. If anything happens to me, Ask for the recording. Recording. What recording? Graham stared at the number, heart thumping again, because Evelyn might have left more than a lullaby, and whatever she left, it was waiting.